Hi, everybody. Today, my topic is your wedding budget. Okay. Uh, this number is going to depend on that meeting that we had. In one of my previous videos, I talked about all of our people that are going to be providing any financial assistance. We're all meeting together and deciding what our base number is, what our final number that we're going to be working with as far as paying for the big day, right? Now, this number is going to dictate, again, ultimately, what kind of decisions you're making all the way down the line, right? Leading up to your big day. Okay, now, I know budget, and I'm going to refer to this now from this point forward as the B word, right? It has, we all hate sticking to a budget. We all, with very few exceptions, right? There are some people that are really, really, they're into all of that. And that's good. But it's kind of, it's a constraint, right? So that B word is very necessary, right? And when we're beginning that wedding planning, those costs of this wedding, they can add up really, really quickly. And they can end up growing out of control if we don't watch that budget very closely. Okay. So this is the first step that you and your intended must make together after deciding to get married. So it's a good test of your relationship. Now I know, in these times that we've been probably living together or have had knowledge of each other's incomes and things like that up to this point. Maybe we've even been saving for this particular for your wedding, right? So you already have an idea of what those numbers are. Okay. So you may, again, you're going to be able to involve your parents maybe into this discussion as well. That could, again, be coupled with that gathering that we had to announce to our parents that we were getting married. We can all agree to sit down together in a few days, maybe, and go through all of those discussions, right? The parents might need a little bit of time to think things through and figure out exactly where they stand and what they are going to be able to contribute, and other family members that you feel or have mentioned to you in the past that they'd like to help out also should be involved, obviously, in this discussion as well. Okay. Now you can obviously move money around from category to category depending on, where your target expense is, right? In fact, um, this is, but this is going to be our main outline. This is going to be our place where we begin. And then again, if you say, hey, well, the venue didn't cost so much as I thought it was going to cost. And so I can move some of that money over to another category, flowers, whatever it might be, right? Or somebody decides that they're going to donate something to your wedding, and now all of a sudden it's a minimal expense, if any, and that kind of thing. Okay. Now, the venue, that is probably going to be your largest expense, depending on where you decide that you're going to be getting married, performing this whole thing, right? And if you have your heart set on a particular venue, it can not only it can affect your wedding date. It can, depending on the availability of that venue, like, oh, I have really, really, really want to have my wedding at XYZ venue. Um, and they're not available on your original wedding date that you select. So, that's going to dictate that availability. Also, when you're talking to them, you need to inquire as to what amenities are included with that venue cost, right? They might say, hey, if you use our in-house catering service, or if you use, uh, rooms that are attached to the venue for your bridal party and things like that to get ready. There might be some other things that you need to talk about as to what's going to be included in that venue cost, right? Again, it could very well affect some of those other spending categories in your B word. Okay. Next thing is going to be drinks. That's going to be about 7% of your budget. Even if it's a pay as you go bar, you're obviously going to have the expense of the bartender themselves and his or her services. An open bar obviously is going to affect that B word even more. Okay. The cake, about 2%, give or take. Now, I feel like that's really a little low for a good quality uh, cake. We're now not something from the grocery store bakery, right? So don't trust that all important item to one of those grocery stores or a big box store. A groom's cake, also, if you plan on having a groom's cake, that has to be taken into consideration too. Um, Also, I've seen a trend actually using small cakes that match the wedding theme as table centerpieces at a sit down meal. That might be a thought as well. That way, there's not that whole cooking and, I mean, cooking, cutting and serving um, logistic thing, right? Where everybody's trying to get a piece of the wedding cake because it could be right there at the table. Um, yeah, so that might be an idea too. Okay, but again, that's going to be an additional expense as well, depending on how many tables you've got, how many people you're serving. Now, I have heard, a trend as to, at least part of the cake not being real. Maybe we have the top layer being that we can cut into that, and then we do have that big box store in the back that the catering people are going to be cutting and serving. I don't know about that. It's all about not just the pretty and the presentation, but also the taste is a big factor as well. But anyway, so find a good quality baker to handle that for you. Uh, Talking about that, going still in the food theme, about 16%, depending on, this is going to be, again, a huge variation. Because are you doing this, buffet style? Are you doing it family style? Are you doing it as a sit down dinner? Are there servers? Is it going to be cooked on site? Uh, so be mindful also when you're planning these meals of some very common allergies among people, and make sure that you've noted anything that might be a guest issue with some of the food that you select. But again, all of those things are going to influence the final cost here, right? But about 16% um, of your B word, all right, right there up there with the budget. I mean, the menu itself. Okay. Now the ceremony, another 2%. Now, again, this is a number I feel is a little low, right? A good, experienced, entertaining officiant, right, is going to cost you a little more than, Uncle Joe that just got his license for y'all. You know what I'm saying? Um, so, see my blog post again. How important is your officiant? Um, Also, if there are any additional elements to your ceremony, like you're doing a sand mixing or a hand fasting, candle lighting, broom jumping, whatever it might be, shot mixing, the cost for those items, of course, are going to be added in there as well. Okay. So again, I think 2% is a little bit low for a good, experienced, full service officiant. Okay. Um, and attire and beauty. Hmm. Uh, 8%. Yeah, I think another item that's going to vary hugely, right? Obviously, if you've got a designer dress, that's going to cost you a little bit more. If you've got something simple, or you're going casual, or you're even borrowing uh, your wedding dress, right? From, that's your something borrowed, maybe from another family member that you really, you know, uh, loved their wedding gown and would love to be able to borrow it. Okay. Do you want a makeup artist, right, for your big day? A hairdresser, all of that. Are you providing those services for your entourage, for your bridesmaids? So all of those things need to be taken into consideration again. So that's, the attire and beauty category. Again, 8% I think might be a little low. Depends on your budget, of course, because for just a good makeup and, person, we're talking about a couple of $100 per person. So yeah. Again, that's going to vary depending on the size of your entourage and whether you're paying for it or not. Okay. Rings, 2%. Now this is an item that you guys can shop for together, right? Um, I have heard people ask how far in advance we need to do this. Of course, you need to provide time for any resizing that needs to be happening if you're going to get engraving. Like it's a big thing to put an engraving inside the band and things like that. So I would think a minimum of 6 to 8 weeks in advance in order to uh, buy those rings. Okay. Flowers and decor. Um, about 7%. Again, fresh flowers are going to be very costly. Depending on the season, depending on do try to stay in season with your florals. If you go out of season, now they have to be shipped from other parts of the world, and there could be logistical issues with that, of course, and obviously a huge expense increase, right? So try again to stay with those end season anyway. And you might opt for your silk flowers, right? Some people might think it is tacky, but this is your day. This is your ceremony, right? Your money. So decor can include those candles, those centerpieces, guest book, all of those things. So we're wrapping all those items up in together. Stationery. All right, so about 5% of your budget is going to go for stationery. This includes your save the date cards, your invitations themselves, the RSVP cards, programs, if you're going to do programs for your ceremony. Are you hiring a calligrapher? Oh my goodness, yeah. Beautiful, beautiful work, but obviously an added expense, right? So that cost is going to vary greatly depending on what you decide to do, what your vendor uh, uh, choice is, and what your needs are. Okay. Music, about 8%. Now, don't scrimp on a DJ. Please don't scrimp on a DJ. He or she can set the mood for that entire uh, reception, right? They also, of course, provide your choice of music during the ceremony itself. You might have, they include mics and speakers and all of those things. Make sure that you mic your officiant. If you've got over 75 to 100 guests, you probably want to mic your officiant. Make sure it's not something that they have to hold in their hand, because we have our book that we have to do with the ceremony, right? So make sure it's going to be a lapel mic or microphone, even on a stand, works as well. Okay. All right, so that DJ during the reception, they're the ones that get out there and get those guests dancing. They provide those MC skills. Though I have worked as an MC at a reception or two, um, with the DJ, right? And so all they were responsible at that point was playing the music, and um, I was the one that actually got out there and acted as cheerleader to make sure that that reception is moving along, right? You're also going to have to, if you have speakers during your ceremony, like people that are coming up and reciting, Bible verses or poetry or what have you, that you have speakers, you want to make sure that they are mic'd as well. Perhaps the DJ can even go to the extent of providing lighting, especially for the dance floor situation, but lighting as well. If you're going a live band situation, of course, they can provide a lot of those same services, but of course, they're going to cost more. You want a string quartet during your wedding ceremony? Yeah, that can. All of these things can add up, but some considerations that you need to make sure. So you might have maybe a string quartet during the wedding ceremony itself, and then switch to a DJ for the reception. There's no problem mixing and matching. I was even at a reception where they had a DJ and a live band, and they just kind of tag teamed, right? Play for an hour or two and take a break, and while they were taking a break, then the other played for an hour or two. So there you go. Gifts and favors, okay, about 2% of your budget is going to go there. Are you going to get a gift for your new spouse, right? If so, yeah, that's going to be involved there. Favors for guests. Now, you gotta think about this. A lot of times these gifts for guests get thrown away. So, um, edible favors might be a good way to go, right? Might be a good call. Maybe a little package of cookies with the happy couples pictures on them. Yeah, save the expense, right? Um, don't give little gifts just cause you feel like you need to give little gifts. Okay. Photographer. Now, a good photographer, and we're going to talk about photos and video. I'm going to put them all in one place here. It says 10%, but a photographer is an absolute must. You definitely have to have a good photographer. You're going to cherish these photos for the rest of your lives, your children's lives, your grandchildren's lives, right? So trusting these precious moments to a cousin with their cell phone, right? Or some an inexperienced photographer, whatever, right? Come on, don't cheap out on this, right? A videographer also might be nice, especially for some of those awesome drone shots. You've seen them of those drop dead gorgeous weddings that are going on, and they've got the overhead shots, and oh my gosh, right? Depending on again, this is going to be on a case by case basis. The two ceremonies can be vastly different, and obviously, in what the needs that they have for videography and things like that. Okay. Transportation, about 2%. Are you going to hire a limo? Right? You're going to do the whole horse and carriage thing, right? Uncle Festus's for Fiesta, right? What are you going to use for transportation? We got to move from point A to point B. We got to show up at the venue, right? A getaway car. You're going to need that right at the end of your reception, right? You want to do the whole, everybody throwing stuff at you and all that kind of thing. But anyway, but yeah, the bon voyage, mobile, whatever you want to call it. But we're going to put about 2% on this transportation budget item, right? So there you go. A wedding planner, a wedding planner. Now this should have been one of your first. I probably should move this up closer to, right behind the venue. Okay. But about 8%, and again, it's going to vary greatly. So you're going to hire this awesome wedding planner that's got a good following. It's a lot of brides choose to forfeit, to just pass on this wedding planner thing. Now, a good wedding planner can actually save you money in the long run because well, we'll talk more about that in just a second. But you also could opt in for just a day of planner, coordinator, just so that it's not something that you, as the wedding couple, right? You've got enough stress on you that day, right? You got to get up in front of all these people and do the thing, right? And you don't need all of this last minute scrambling and being in charge, just an added stuff, right? And everybody blowing up your phone because they have questions about this or they have questions about that. So you can take all of that, just steer it over to that day of coordinator or the wedding planner and say, hey, everything goes through that person. I'm only here to get married, right? But again, they can take a lot of that, cut that expense for you too, because a lot of times they've got, um, what do you call it? Contacts. That's the word I was looking for. They've got contacts that might give them a little bit of a discount on their services and things like that. So that can all add up in your favor. Okay. Miscellaneous expenses. We're going to throw a lot of stuff into this category. About 5% of our budget ought to be steered in those miscellaneous expenses, right? Tips to your vendors. In fact, I just received this, actually, my cup of coffee, right? See, look at that. There you go. Got that from a wedding couple. Here you go. So that's what I consider a tip, right? Um, Additional last minute emergency costs, like, oh my gosh, the florals is sometimes that's a thing, right? It's like, oh, this didn't come in and I'm gonna have to make a change in my floral arrangements and things like that. So a lot of those things. Um, all right, so I think that that's all that I have. Let me make sure that I have covered everything that I talked about. Okay. Now, I really hope that you found something of use today, and that I'm not just talking head here, but you did find something that you can use and some hints maybe that might have been dropped. Now, it would help me immensely, and I know you don't know me, but if you just like this video, hit that little thumbs up thing, comment below, especially if you have a question for me. Now, this is a big thing. If you have a question for me or you have a suggestion for an upcoming video topic, please feel free to drop it down into the comments. Feel free to forward this video to people that you feel like, hey, they're struggling with this, budget decision situation and where they feel they need to best put their money. Then yeah, feel free to forward this video to those people. You can, as you know, you can subscribe by clicking that button and ringing that little bell, so it'll tell you every time that I upload. I'm uploading about every 2 weeks. I put a video out. So there you go. I think that's all I've got for today. But I do want you to remember something. Life is not about finding yourself. Okay, it is about creating yourself. So create the person that you want to be, create the life that you want to live. It ain't easy, but it is worth it. All right, so until next time, my best to you all. Bye.